Yeah, on record, Tshidi.
I think it worked in favor of the generation for Comrade Pula Mabe to contest, for Comrade Mzwandile Masina to contest. If it was Comrade Lungisa contesting alone, we won't be sitting with me today. I could have been killed a long time ago by those who own the means of production in this country.
Hello, this is episode 9 of season 2 of Politricking with Tshidi Madia. That last bit there, that's my name. This is a politics podcast brought to you by Eyewitness News. So all eyes should be on Parliament this week. Is this the moment that the Pala Pala farm saga sinks a sitting president? We don't know. I actually legit have no idea. But the independent panel looking into the matter, seeing if there is a prima facie case of impeachment that can be made against President Cyril Ramaphosa, is handing over its report to Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. By the way, on this particular issue, on this burglary and all the allegations attached to it, I agree with the DA on an ad hoc committee. It wanted that to begin with. It did not get its way. It is now saying if this independent panel's findings fail to move in that particular direction, it will continue to fight for an ad hoc committee to look into Pala Pala. I think that makes more sense to me because of the kind of work that the ad hoc committee is allowed to do. It's emboldened to do so much more, to dig a little bit deeper and further, and that might help bring this issue to finality. Let me mention this as well, moving away from that. VBS, I think it was a 2018 report, né? The Great Heist. That story, that issue is still a thing. It remains a thing that the mutual bank, catering to the needs of Bukoko Leburacholo, mostly from Limpopo, was looted the way that it was. It remains with us. This situation and those implicated must never be divorced from the upcoming national conference of the ANC. I think some people want to put VBS on the back burner, but you shouldn't. Why? The recent arrest of a former mayor, Julia Matebe, and Mina Maredi, who's a former municipal manager from Sukukune, have no doubt been met with some resistance in political spaces. Denim Caesar, an alleged kingpin in the saga, was not only barred from the contest at Limpopo's June conference, but these latest arrests are people linked to Msiza. The omnipresent one, as I like to call him, might feel more emboldened to work a little bit more aggressively in steering a province as powerful and as big as Limpopo. Now, Limpopo is the ANC's second largest province, further and further away from Ramaphosa. So be on the lookout for posts that scream, not the N1, but the N3. That's in reference to the highways, right? The N1 travels between Limpopo and Gauteng, from Limpopo to Gauteng, rather. The N3 is the route to KZN. Who's in KZN? Zweli Mkhize. So you don't divorce these issues and these arrests that are happening on the sidelines from what's at play in the political space in the country. So it's interesting to watch how that will play out. It'll be interesting to see what Msiza does with the power that he wields and whether or not the areas where he's enjoyed a lot of support and power in Limpopo, where he can command things from the outside because he's omnipresent, because he's not in the room, but he's in the room, if you know what I mean. It'll be interesting to see what he's able to do with his influence, more so because there are areas that remain loyal to Ramaphosa. They have to choose, right? And they're not choosing Zweli Mkhize versus Ramaphosa. No, they're choosing Ramaphosa versus Denim Caesar because Denim Caesar has been able to command the province in a particular way for so long. But again, that conference is not too far away, so those things will come to a head very, very soon. This week, we speak to Andile Lungisa. So Andile is on the campaign trail. He's crisscrossing provinces. He's speaking to delegates. But this is in spite of his own home province, Eastern Cape, saying that the suspension against Mbanjwa is upheld. This is about that JAG incident. So it's a long-standing issue that has found its way through many processes in the ANC. Clearly, as I speak, it remains a factor, but he's very, very much not bothered by it. He is crisscrossing, he is campaigning, he's meeting with people. Lungisa, a committed lover of Umpokoto and a revolutionary. Here he is. We are now really, really edging closer to that ANC National Conference, elective conference. We have been speaking to different leaders of the organization. I think a lot of people, I'm not sure if they rate you or don't rate you. I'm not too sure. But my next guest is an ANC leader who's unmistakable. The minute he opens his mouth, you know exactly who I'm talking to. Good day. Hi, sir. How are you?
Hi. And the listeners.
Yes, this podcast has listeners.
Oh,
yes.
and viewers. I don't know whether there is live on TV or is
there's no camera. It's a podcast in the truest sense of a podcast, not a vlog.
Okay.
It's a podcast. There's no video. It's just us talking.
You know, they are changes which are taking place on daily basis in our communities.
Anyway, you heard that voice, ne? That's Andile Lungisa, ANC member. You are part of the Provincial Executive Committee.
Yes.
You lost out on a bid to become the Provincial Treasurer. Then you set your eyes on national office. How does that work where you can't win it at provincial level and you said, let me give it a go at national? So quickly after losing at provincial level.
No, you must remember the province is more of a caretaker. In my entire life, I was never provincial. I was part of those people who waged the national struggle. You must remember, in real terms, my area where I was born is in the Val. At the age of 9, I was holding a spear, staying at Hostel 2 with my father, fighting against the system at the age of 9. In fact, it's the area which are supposed to be embraced, where are supposed to be nominated. The issue of Eastern Cape is just an issue of language, because if you speak a certain language in South Africa, you will be quickly associated with the area which is got which speaks that language. That's why it will always be the issue of Eastern Cape. I always part of the people who have fought in the national liberation. I fought in the national struggle. I always view myself as part of people who are part of the national agenda in this country. I'm always anti what is called the provinces, because provinces, it was more of a compromise. I'm not really in that space of provinces.
That's fair. I can take that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that what you were contesting at the time would have been a position of provincial treasurer. You then don't make it there and you set your eyes on the bigger stage. And you just explained now that in context, you've always kind of been a player at national stage. But now, as I speak to you, the nominations have been published. You didn't make the cut. Offline, I asked you how many nominations you got, and you said you got many. I checked you, 297. So as I speak to you now, is there still a campaign to try and make sure that Andile Lungisa becomes national treasurer of the ANC?
Who said I have not made a cut?
I'm saying it from looking at the data from the Electoral Committee.
Do you have the constitution of the ANC?
I've got the data from the Electoral Committee that is overseeing nominations. And according to them, you are not the top 3 Andile that are contesting.
Please,
except that 2. Wait, even if you want to contest that, but because now when you contest that, you're contesting the Electoral Committee of the ANC.
No, I'm not contesting anything. I always guided by the constitution of the ANC.
Okay, tell me about the constitution.
Anything which is outside the constitution of the ANC, really, just open the constitution of the ANC. And we will read that part, because I don't want to read it myself. It will have different interpretation. The whole thing is my own formulation. Just open the constitution of the ANC.
You want me to go to Google? I'll go to Google just now.
Just go to Rule 12.
Okay.
0.7.1.
I'll look for it.
Of the constitution of the ANC.
But explain so long, yeah?
And then we then read that rule.
Does this mean that you don't rate? Do you recognize the Electoral Committee of the ANC?
No, I recognize, I respect that committee is led by the veteran, the senior leader of our movement, Comrade Kgalema. I think all of us will be in agreement. What I like about Comrade Kgalema, he understands the constitution of the ANC very well. He's one of the defenders of the constitution of the ANC. Is like myself, I defend the constitution of the ANC. Anything which is outside the constitution of the ANC, I really don't entertain it. I don't support it. If you go to Rule 12.7.1 of the constitution of the ANC.
Sure, I'm looking for it.
I won in the Western Cape, which is a province. I qualified to be on the ballot.
Also, you got a provincial nomination.
Yeah, I've got the provincial
that should
nomination.
be sufficient enough for you to be on the ballot.
Yeah, I'm on the ballot. What is important now is delegates. You will need 2,000 251.
The interim committee in the Western Cape's put you on the ballot from where you stand.
No, I am on the ballot. It will be just a committee which is led by Mkhulua, Comrade Khalima, just to rectify that omission.
Also, you're waiting for them to come back to you?
Yeah, just to...
I imagine you've lodged a dispute as we speak?
No, I can't launch disputes. I'm not a crybaby. Like I want to be elected at all costs. I'm a revolutionary. Structures of the ANC, they've nominated me. I've accepted that responsibility. I'm not a crybaby.
So you flagged this to them?
Yeah, the delegates of the ANC in that conference, they will elect revolutionaries. They've raised my name. I will be there in the ballot in that conference. I know comrades who are part of our generation, those who are part of the radical agenda in this country, those who are part of the progressive forces in South Africa, also outside in the world, they support some of us, which I'm hoping that the structures of the ANC, they will support me in the national conference, because the main focus is not the issue of nominations. The main focus, you must get 2,251 delegates to be elected. It's either we are the president, it's either we are a teacher, we are either SG, DSG, or DP, or NEC member. We need majority in our contest in that conference. It would be 2,251. Is what I'm being engaged by comrades all over the country. The main focus now is to interact with comrades who are delegates. They are calling me. Yesterday I was in Limpopo. Today again I'm going to Limpopo. I was in the Western Cape. I was in the Northern Cape. I was in KwaZulu-Natal. I am also going to Mpumalanga, invited by comrades who are delegates, because they are saying, Comrade Lungisa, we know you. We are part of the generation of economic freedom in our lifetime. We came with a clear program of action, like the generation of 1944, which came with a program of action in 1949. We are not different from that generation. We believe that we are the face of that generation, because if Comrade Julius Malema was there, he will be the face of that generation. But as number two in that generation, you become the face. I've accepted that responsibility on those bases, because I will never, as individual, and jump and deal with what is called the generational hierarchy, because in any generation there's its own hierarchy. It's like the generation of young lions. It had its own face, which was Comrade Peter Mokaba. The Comrade Lulu Johnson and about Comrade Nyami Boy, they never jumped Comrade Peter Mokaba, because they knew that there's what is called, there's a generational pecking order which must be respected. Even myself, I never, when I was with Comrade Julius in the ANC as the president, who came with the program of action with us and the NEC, which was elected in 2008. We are not a generation because we were elected in 2008, Comrade said. I must explain this thing.
Why are you calling me a comrade?
I know we are progressive. We are always on the progressive side. It will be later that we are part of the liberals in this country. As I knew you in the past, we were not part of the liberals. We speak about the generation because that leadership which was elected in 2008, they remain what is called office bearers.
Yes.
They only became a generation in 2011 in Gallagher conference because they came with the program of action, economic freedom in our lifetime. It is like that generation of 1944 which came with the program of action in 1949. That's why we are called a generation.
I want to pick up at some of the things that you just mentioned now. I want to focus on this generation thing, but before we get there, you say you're not a crybaby, you wouldn't lodge a dispute. A comrade of yours, Lindiwe Sisulu, has lodged a dispute. I looked at the dispute she's put through, and I compared it, funny enough, to the ANC's constitution and some of the issues that you raise now about being backed by a province. And she doesn't have those things. What is your assessment of what's going on between her and even the handling of that situation by the Electoral Committee? There was a public statement that pretty much came out. A letter was made public to Lindiwe Sisulu about the complaints that you put through.
No. I won't comment on that. I don't comment to other comrades. I respect their own views, how they manage their process, including their own campaigns. I don't really comment. My focus is on the generational mission. As you know, that after Comrade Julius Malema, number 2 in that hierarchy is Comrade Andile Lungisa. I've got a responsibility of organizing, mobilizing the generation in this country, that we must be able to change the material conditions of Africans in particular and blacks in general in this country.
Your assessment
we cannot
of how you've
allow
done that?
The majority in this country to be paupers in their own land of birth, where they own nothing. The means of production in this country, they are still in the hands of the few.
I can never disagree with
captains
that
of
view.
industries.
I can never.
Even those who are part of the middle class, like you, Abo Amu, they don't own anything here. A car which you drive is owned by the banks. A house which you claim to own is owned by the banks.
And
literally, we are paupers in our own land of birth. I've got a responsibility of mobilizing that generation.
I cannot disagree with that view about what needs to happen with the black majority. I can't disagree with that view. Do you feel you've done enough, though? If you assess what you say is your task as the second in command, have you actually done that successfully? When you look around you and you look at ANC members, have you managed to conscientize enough of them to that view that you're now mentioning now and you're marshalling now?
No. What we're doing, you must remember, is not going to be an easy process. Some of our own comrades, you'll remember, some of them, they were expelled. Others were suspended. Others, they were killed. As I'm sitting with you, you've got the likes of Comrade Cindy Somakaka who are no longer alive, who were killed in the process. We must ask ourselves a question: how can a SG of the ANC Youth League end up being a councillor in a small municipality somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal, where he will be killed on the issues of, because he was fighting against corruption, for those who wanted to build a community hall, stealing the money from the community hall. Now, a person who was a SG ended up being killed. Now, if you have the likes of Andile Lungisa who are still alive, yes, they will be suspended, they will be persecuted. Those who are in the position of authority, when they are sleeping, they see us in their faces because they know that we are tampering with the status quo in this country, we are tampering with what is called the white monopoly capital. What they can only do is to write letters of suspensions. When they go to meetings, they have no other business.
Like you're supposed to be on suspension now as we speak.
No, when they wake up, they think about suspension. Even if they go in the NEC, they think, what mechanisms, what can we do illegally to suspend Lungisa? Even if Lungisa have won in the DC, they can even constitute just kangaroo committees. It's what they do.
Andile,
but they will never. They'll never succeed. I'm telling you.
I'm hearing you.
Yes.
But I need you to also take responsibility for your own actions, right?
Yes.
You speak about the generational mission, right? You speak about how you're second in command to that vision in the ANC. I say to you, what is your assessment of how far you've come in conscientizing people?
No. That generational program, everyone is conscientized. We will see the delegation which will enter the Nazareth conference. It will be dominated more than 60%. It will be comrades who are part of that generational program. Yes, any generation, it will have its own traitors. There will be those who are aligning with the elites in this country, with those who are managing patronage in this country. We are not surprised as a generation, but we've got enough revolutionaries. We've got enough people who are part of what is called the national agenda, the economic freedom in our lifetime. Even in the structures of the ANC, they are dominated by that generation. That generation need to have to make a call in that conference. Yes, the awareness is a matter which we are doing on daily basis to make sure that we create that awareness. We can make sure that as a generation, we're solid, we follow one direction, but people, they are not like water, where they will always flow to one direction. Even before 1994, there are those who are traitors, which they were calling Bimbi. They always worked, they collaborated with the system. Even today, there will be those who will collaborate with those who are holding the levers of power, with those who are running patronage in this country. But we know we are having a sizable number of revolutionaries which are going to fight, who are part of the generation. That's why they nominated, it's not a small number to be nominated by 297 when you are suspended.
When you're suspended, you have no right to participate. Why are you then campaigning? If you're suspended, you should actually be disqualified. So what are you doing then?
No. I appealed all those decisions. Even if they take a decision today, I will appeal even to the national conference. I can even take the court route if I can see people they are drinking what is called qilika. It goes to qilika. It goes to their mind. Qilika is the alcohol which is made in the older days in the African communities, where we used to use what is called roots. You see. Even if when you have drank that alcohol, even if traffic they can stop you here somewhere in the streets of Joburg, they put that tester, breathalyzer, they will never detect it. But whilst you are drunk in the process, so I saying even if people they can continue drinking that type of alcohol, we will continue in the movement or part of the liberation movement. We never joined the ANC because it's in power. At the age of 9 in Hostel 2 in the Val, I was holding a spear as a kid, already fighting in the liberation movement, in the liberation struggle.
You use the language Izimpimpi traitors, and I think it's a dangerous language because of the throwback and what happened to so-called Izimpimpis in the 90s, 80s, and so on and so forth. Who do you identify in 2022 as traitors to this mission?
No. If there's a mission, a program which says, in this country, Africans in particular and blacks in general, they are still paupers in their own land of birth. They don't own any form of wealth, means of production. They are still concentrated in the few of those who owns means of production, especially the what we call the white monopoly capital. Now, if you've got a program, everyone accepted that this is a main program. No one have even written a 2-pager against that program. And then you go and collaborate with those who are opposed to that program. We are a traitor to that program. Those are the people which I will always call, they betray the generation. They are traitors. In a process where we're saying we cannot allow a situation where our people, they literally own nothing. What they own today is only RDP. Even for that RDP, they don't have that deeds for those RDP houses. We are saying that's the situation which we must be able to change in this country. We cannot allow where we do not own the economy. Let's be open.
Let's be open. Disagree with that point.
No, you agree.
I want us to look at other points too. There's other things I want to touch on, right?
Yeah, okay.
You speak about the generational mission, yet you are part of a cohort that's in support of either a Cyril Ramaphosa, no you're not, or a Zweli Mkhize. That's an older generation across the board. Surely if there's a generation mission, one imagines that the leader you pick to endorse as number one must be young enough to speak to that generational mission. Cyril Ramaphosa isn't, neither Zweli Mkhize for that matter.
Luckily, unless you can quote and say, no, Comrade Lungisa, you're on record supporting President Cyril Ramaphosa.
I didn't say you support Ramaphosa.
You're on record.
I'm making an example.
No, I'm saying Comrade Lungisa on record supporting Comrade Zweli Mkhize. No, I've not been on record for a reason. ANC factions, they will always be there. They always mutate. If as a generation will align ourselves with ANC factions, we will perish. We are mobilizing the generation based on the generational program of economic freedom in our lifetime, where we are saying we must be able to expropriate the land without paying compensation, where we must be able to nationalize the mines, where we must make sure that the banks in this country, they must get what is called banking licenses, which they've got a fixed term of 5 years. Like casinos, we cannot allow a situation where banks, they've got endless licenses. Even if they want to take your banking rights as individuals, they can do willy-nilly. Now they must be given for 5 years. We're talking about a program where we're saying we must establish what is called a black-owned bank, including a state-owned bank. We're talking about a program where we're saying we must be able to beneficiate all the natural resources in this country. Your iron ore, your manganese, your platinum, we're saying they must be processed in this country. We must not take them as raw material to other countries. We're talking about the state-owned bank, which must be able to be established in this country. We're saying we cannot longer continue to manage a plantation like Abono Mahlat in this country. So what we've been doing from 1994. We're saying as part of the radical economic transformation, we must do away where we're still a British satellite. If a queen dies in England, there's an inauguration of a king in England. We're forced in all the media platform, you open your own TV, there's a face of a queen, we're forced, where all our presidents, they must go and be given regalia in Britain, from President Mandela to President Mbeki to President Zuma, which President Cyril also went, I think, 4 days or 5 days ago. We are still a British colony. We are the only country in the African continent where we never had our own Independence Day. We only had the political breakthrough of 1994. We are saying we need to depart from that. We need to have our own independence where we can preside over our own affairs than to go and sign the accord with the Queen and the King in Britain.
How do you achieve that when, as this generation, right, the youth leaders who are trying to take some level of control and have a say in who and what we become in terms of our destiny, how does it then work when you've got an Andile Lungisa versus a Mzwandile Masina versus a Pule Mabe for one particular position? Surely, if it is a generational mission, and you've spoken about how you're the number 2 to a Malema, surely then there should be a face that you all fall behind. You haven't done that. Similarly, when we engage as members of the media, what we get is a comparison amongst yourselves of who's better and why you're better suited to contest for a particular position.
No, I think it worked in favor of the generation. For Comrade Pule Mabe to contest, for Comrade Mzwandile Masina to contest. If it was Comrade Lungisa contesting alone, we won't be sitting with me today. I could have been killed a long time ago by those who own the means of production in this country. But now they are totally confused because Comrade Pule Mabe, who is part of the generation, is contesting. Comrade Mzwandile Masina, who is part of the generation, is contesting, including Comrade Lungisa, who's part of that generation, is contesting. Those who are anti-generational agenda, I think they are very confused today. I think it has worked in favor of the generation, but it becomes the responsibility of those comrades, including the generation, to be able to say, now we're closer to the 16th and the 20th of December. Let us be able to consolidate and have one name, which will be backed by the generation. But I don't think we must fight with Comrade Pule, we must fight with Comrade Masina, we must fight with Comrade Lungisa. Let us all embrace them and
Ronald.
say,
Is Ronald not a comrade in the same light?
I was responding to your question because you referred to the two. Is what I'm responding to. I think it's what we must be able to do. It has worked in favor of the generation. If the generation have picked one name, that name could have been killed by yourselves, especially in the media. You know, the neo-colonial secular media in this country and the agenda. Yes.
You know, guys don't take accountability for your actions, but I'll come back to that. So you are open to having conversations and maybe even having your campaign folding in order to support one of your comrades?
No. We talk every day. If I can open my phone, you will see calls from Comrade Mzwandile. You will see calls from Comrade Pule. Even if they open their phones, we talk. We talk almost on daily basis. Also, you must remember, we are not personal. Some of us who are still fresh, we don't have high blood pressures. Also, in this, it is just a revolutionary cause which needs revolutionaries. Comrades, they know we have not regretted since that conference of the Youth League in 2008 until today. We have been speaking one language without regretting. We have fought against all administrations in this country without fear and favor.
So you're talking every day. How willing are you, Andile, to fold in order for the generational mission to be served? How willing are you to withdraw and to take your 297 nods and direct them towards maybe a Pule Mabe.
That's why I'm saying we talk every day.
Yeah, I know.
There's no
I'm
issue
not asking you directly.
in supporting Comrade Pule Mabe. I have no issue in supporting Comrade Mzwandile. All of them, they are part of our own generation. But obvious, we must be able to put into context that there is a pecking order in any generation which must be respected by all of us.
And that's not going to happen, Mos.
No. A pecking order is a responsibility of any generation. Because if we can kill what is called internal cultures, internal traditions, internal systems, organization, iyawuba yilento ngesixhosa kuthiwa kwavula kuzenzela. We're saying there's a pecking order of any organization, even in our own generation, there's a pecking order. It's like now we are interviewing me. If Comrade Lulu Johnson enters that door, I will have to give Lulu Johnson to speak.
Okay.
If
in
Comrade,
respect of the fact that he came before
he came before me. There's that hierarchy. If Comrade Nyami Boy enters that door, I will have to give it Comrade Nyami Boy. If Comrade Lasishualo enters that door, I will have to give it to Comrade Lasishualo. If Comrade Seiso Mohali enters that door, I will have to give it to Comrade Seiso Mohali. If Comrade Joma Swanganye enters that door, I will have to give it to Comrade Joma Swanganye.
So in the world of
there's a hierarchy of any generation.
I'm taking that. But ultimately, Andile, what you're also saying to me is when it comes to a conversation of coalitions, because the ANC is going to have that conversation within itself at a more intensified level and outside of itself. So in a conversation like that with the Malema in the room, you then regard the hierarchy as an important player in how you navigate it. He's forever your president, Mos.
Yes. No, I also talk to him. He's always, he knows when I call him as a president, he never left the organization through his choice. He was expelled by those who are opposed to the generational agenda.
And when it comes to the conversation around coalitions, especially because you've emphasized the mission that you have, the generational mission, he then remains part and parcel in your head towards that generational mission. So if coalitions are on the table, Andile, you are likely to give Julius what he wants based on the fact that here's your president. Is that it?
Yes. That's the hierarchy. You don't tamper with the principle because they are different seasons. It's either winter or summer. You stick to a principle. So
as Julius Malema always says to us as journalists, I will be president of this country in your lifetime. I will be president, union buildings in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. What you are then saying to me, as a leader of the ANC, if you get to a position where you're part of negotiations around coalitions, you will be very willing to allow that to happen because that's your president for life.
Yeah, no. You assess based on the material conditions at that time.
Okay.
If the material conditions are favorable to Comrade Julius, you are not going to be opposed because
no.
Yeah,
because it's forever ANC in your head.
Because if we don't receive enough votes, now they receive enough votes. Because what is called the multi-party government is always based on principle. If you receive more votes, you take a lead. If I receive lesser votes, I support you. That's why I'm saying it will be based on material conditions at that time.
Okay. What is your general thoughts around how the ANC must assess coalitions beyond just this factor that I put on the table? I just put that on because of how well you speak of Malema. Generally, what would you like to see the ANC doing? Because again, as I say, that conversation is going to be part and parcel of the future, really.
No. The ANC can be in power for a longer period.
What does it need to do to achieve that?
We are raising the issue of multi-party government in South Africa on the basis that we are not doing the things which we're supposed to be doing as the ANC. What we're supposed to be doing as the ANC is the main focus, which is part of the key strategic task of the NDR, is to focus on unemployment, where we must be able to bring the dignity of ordinary South Africans. I'm not talking about comrades here who will take pictures, who will deliver food parcels, take pictures when there's a 5 liter of cooking oil or a 12 comma of meal or flour. They take pictures and then they are smiling all over. You can see their teeth across social media. It's not what I'm talking about. What we need in this country is to focus on unemployment, to make sure that all 10 million South Africans are unemployed, they are employed. If they are employed, ANC will never be out of power. ANC will be out of power through our own making. That's why now the issue of multi-party government comes on board, because we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing. In this country, we must take the economy from the hands of the few, which must be distributed to the general population in this country, which are Africans, which are black. If we achieve that, Comrade Tshidi, those people, they'll be loyal to the ANC. As I'm talking to you, you've got young South Africans who have even lost hope in the villages, in the townships, who are not working. If they see you, Tshidi, as a person who's got a nice hairstyle, who's affording, they will not even ask employment. They will ask money to go and buy a cigarette or and buy alcohol, because they have lost hope. We must revive that hope as the ANC. That should be our preoccupation. That South Africans must work, not this notion of building RDP houses. When we build RDP houses, government of apartheid in this country built houses. Is not a new thing. We're just extending what is called a franchise. If you are putting water in the household, we are not doing something which is new. We are extending a franchise. If you are putting electricity, we are not doing something new. We are extending a franchise. We are saying a success of any revolution is to make South Africans, they work. The second element of any revolution is to make sure that South Africans are educated. They are taken to school. Today, as I'm talking to you, you've got more than 3 million South Africans who cannot read and write. If you compare our situation with the Cuban situation, Cubans from 1959, when they defeated Batista, to 1975, in 15 years, Cubans could read and write. There was no question of unemployment. There was no question of poverty in Cuba. They could live longer in terms of their life expectancy rate. In South Africa, you do not have all those elements. There's what is emerging, key elements where we'll say our revolution will become a fair revolution. If we do not change that, we'll always talk about shifting the blame, shifting the goalpost, talking about the multi-party government. What can we do in working with other parties?
How?
As a generation, we are saying that's the change which we want to usher in the ANC come December conference. We are not going to be consumed. We must be able to vote in terms of the elders. We have voted for them from 1994 until today. Our people, they are swimming in poverty. A change has been very minimal.
Thank you for that. The vision that you have, what you want to usher in December, you then need to try and position and sell that to South Africans in 2024. How do you see the turnaround? How quickly can the vision that you have for the country start being sold? And obviously it depends on what kind of ANC walks away from Nasrec in December.
People are also important in this agenda as yourselves. Because if you join forces with us, it will reach a biggest number of population in this country. Obvious. The unfortunately part, we've got yourselves who are part of the neo-colonial agenda, which now you squeeze those who are championing this radical agenda. You always label them, you put them in the corner, you don't even give them a time to make sure that they reach the population.
Yet here you are.
The biggest numbers. I think we might be the first ones. I'm saying I've been closed in every element, because they know the message which we are communicating is a message which must be put under the carpet. No one must be able to.
Please feel free. Your message is not going under the carpet. Your message is going to be on our channels everywhere. Yes. Yet here you are. All I'm saying is the contradiction of what you're pointing out. I'm saying you are at a studio in Sandton at Prime Media Place, being given an ample opportunity to say your piece and to speak about your vision. Let's speak about the ANC. The ANC is in the red. What changes? What can be done if Andile Lungisa, by some fluke, is the next Treasurer General? What changes would you bring so that security guards at Lutulia House are getting their salary, so that staffers who are dedicated to the governing party are not shortchanged and waiting on end and having to beg to keep their houses because they're not getting salaries?
Now, what we do, you change the whole economic policy in this country. So what we need to do is to change the whole economic policy. We must have an economic policy which is very explicit, which is understood by everybody, like the Chinese economic policy. It's what we do not have at the moment, which is the main challenge. Second, we will need to have a clear plan of action, which has got time frames in this country, which we must be able to introduce. If we introduce that plan of action, we introduce a new economic policy in this country, which it will capture all the elements which I've raised earlier, the question of land, the question of banks, tampering with all the monopolies in this country, tampering with the commanding heights of the economy, your issue of the Reserve Bank, the state-owned bank, the black-owned bank. Now, if you deal with that, it becomes easier for the ANC, because the pressure now South Africans, they will see that, and then you employ 10 million South Africans. You address the question of water. It's easy. You take 3% of water from Congo River, you build the biggest river, which will come straight to South Africa, past Namibia, past Botswana, past Zambia, and comes to South Africa. You then address the water crisis in this country. For the next 15 years, you build the biggest river where young South Africans can be able to go and work there. What you also do, all the companies who have listed in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, who have left the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, you make sure that they are penalized, they delist in London Stock Exchange, they list here. You make sure that PIC takes 70% of that money, is invested on infrastructure, is invested on creating jobs, because it's the money of pensions of our grandmothers and grandfathers, is our money. That money cannot remain in the hands of private equity funds, which they do as they please. You take that money, you invest it in the economy. Within 2 years, if the generation is affirmed in that conference, we'll make sure that the unemployment is wiped out. When the unemployment is wiped out, it's easy now is automatically that the workers at Lutuli House, they'll be paid on monthly basis, because the ANC will have its own investment arms. It must never depend on tenders. If a person wins a tender in the municipality, the ANC go and fundraise in that individual. We put our investment arms as the ANC. We build the head office of the ANC. How can the ANC have a building which is falling down there in downtown? It's what we'll be able to do if we assume that responsibility as a generation. You must remember, if Comrade Andile is elected, as a generation, we are not fighting for the election of Comrade Andile. We are fighting for the perspective, for the idea, for a generational mission. It will be then representing that generation. It will be the success of that generation, like all other generations.
I want to speak about the issue of investment arms and the issue of tenders. Both areas the ANC hasn't actually managed well. When you think about investment arms and you think about what happened that entire period, and you think a little bit about the way tenders have
those ones years. Of they are taking chances. They've taken ANC for chances. Those investment arms is a councillor house. We're not talking about those ones who are taking chances in the movement. You must remember, we'll change the situation. There'll be tears. We are talking about serious investment arms for the organization, not people who are coming to this country to come and rip the ANC off.
But the ANC allows itself to be that, because then enters Bosasa, then enters so and so and so and so and so and forth. No, let's leave Bosasa. But it's similar. It's about because now when you say people are taking the ANC advantage, the ANC allows itself to be that.
I'm saying let's leave the question of Bosasa. If we want to talk about that question, it will need more time, because Bosasa was run by revolutionaries. Gavin Watson was a revolutionary. When it was not fashionable in this country, it stood on the front lines for our liberation in this country. Now, those were then opposed to Comrade Gavin. They came with all the excuses, even the big ones, like Agrids, the Italians who don't even know what they were doing in this country, how they were allowed even to enter our borders. We like these loose cannons who are coming from Europe or somewhere. Will
so does this mean you have a view about the state capture reports?
No. I'm saying when we have time, we will go. But as I'm standing here, I will continue defending Comrade Gavin Watson. He was a revolutionary. That family, Watson family, they stood at the cold front when it was not fashionable. Now every person thinks is a revolutionary. Will always stand with the revolutionaries in this country. I'm talking about these companies who are coming from outside, who always take the advantage.
No, I want to go back
movement.
and touch. We don't have time, sure, but I want to touch on that Bosasa issue just very quickly. I recognize what the Watson family's done. I recognize its history during apartheid. I get it. But what I'm now asking you, based on the comments that you're making, is a revolutionary is a revolutionary no matter what they've done wrong. So you don't sit and recognize where they've gone wayward, taking advantage of the organization or the country for that matter.
No. Let's say it's a perception, because the State Capture Commission have never interacted with Comrade Gavin Watson to hear his position on the matter. It will remain as a perception because they only listen to an Italian called Agriz, who stole the money and then put it somewhere in Italy, not in our shores,
So
in this country. With those Makulu boss called Agriz, I don't even really.
So you
those
don't
are
regard
lumpens
the
which
state capture
we
reports.
can't.
So you have no regard for the state capture
No,
report.
I'm not saying I don't regard.
I'm asking
No,
you.
No, the report is there. It must be processed, but that report must not be the report, how the state capture was managed. They were very subjective. They were not objective.
Okay.
We will continue engaging that subjectivity of the state capture, that they should have looked on the matter holistically. Also, there's nothing even called the state capture in political terms, because there's no state here which was ever captured, because the state, we talk about the state in the context of Lenin. When we talk about the state and the revolution, we understand the state in that context. We are not in the space of liberals, where they understand the state the way it was defined by Zondo and then public protector. A state, I understand the state in the context of Lenin, when he spoke about the state and the revolution.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the state. There was nothing which was captured in this country.
Okay.
That's why police, they are free. That's why soldiers, they are free. That's why nurses, they are free. Those are components of the state.
I'm going to leave that. I'm in disagreement with many things, but I'm not going to get into that because
invite me.
No, we've run out of time.
Talk about what's called the state.
We'll have a different conversation.
What constitutes
we must
state,
maybe have a conversation about what constitutes a state. The one thing that's been clear is that there will always be resistance to ideas. Even this, the ANC's elders are refusing to budge. Many of them have long past their time in office, should leave, but they're refusing. We speak now about the resistance around certain issues. We speak now about state capture, rather. There'll always be resistance. Are you worried that this vision will be resisted? I mean, there's resistance within the ANC on the fight against corruption in and of itself as we speak.
No, there's no generation which have ever handed power to any other generation.
Fair.
We will be playing, if we think me and you, because me and you and Amu were one generation.
Let me just very quickly say,
must fight.
I must maybe explain, because I say Amu's name at the end of the podcast.
We must fight.
Amu Ramila, wait. Amu Ramila is one of the producers of the show.
Yes.
So he keeps mentioning Amu's name. That's who she is. I usually mention a name at the end of the show.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. No, I'm saying we're one generation. We must fight one battle. There's no generation which will ever hand power to another generation. That means our generation will need to fight to change the situation in our country. The other generation, they will just collapse everything in this country. People will be chased away by communities. It's us, it's not them. That's why we must be able to seize the moment in December and change the material conditions of South Africa for the better. We cannot allow a situation where 67% of young South Africans are unemployed, are not working, they've lost hope whilst we're still alive. We must change that situation. Within 2 years, if we take over in December, all 10 million South Africans, they will be able to work. We have worked on that plan. We have costed that plan. We have put time frames on that plan. We are not just speaking because we're in your show.
Your president says the ANC is the number one accused when it comes to corruption, right? What is your reading of the ANC and corruption and attempts to weed out corruption from the ANC and its ranks?
No, ANC, it has a name. It's got a logo. What you must always attend is individuals in the ANC. ANC will never be number one accused of anything, because ANC is got a name, is got a logo. If there are no individuals, that logo will never move. The ANC moves because there are individuals. You must attend the attitude of individuals who are within the ANC. ANC will never wrong anyone, will never be number one accused. It will only be individuals which can be number one accused. If you have mentioned one or two individuals to say they are number one accused, I was going to agree. I only disagree because he mentioned the ANC as an organization. Is why I disagree.
But what is your sense of how members react to the instruments the ANC is trying to use to root out the corrupt?
No. The ANC, everyone is happy when the corruption is rooted out. Everyone is not happy when the corruption is selective. Arrest immediately all those who are involved in corruption. If you go to the Eastern Cape until today, there are people who are involved in corruption. The NPA, they are charged sheet, they are everything, until NPA has not acted until today, because they are protected, because they are closer to those who are presiding over the affairs in this country. They are closer to those who are running the state in this country. That's why the members of the ANC, they'll always be up wrong. If the sitting government fights corruption, it must arrest Lungisa, it must arrest Tshidi without fear and favor. It must not choose between Tshidi and Lungisa. That because we are closer to Lungisa, is part of our faction, will never arrest Lungisa. That is the outroar in the members of the ANC. If those are accused of corruption, they are treated the same. There'll be no fights, there'll be no issue within the ranks of the ANC. You must remember, we fought against the same phenomenon which happened to us 2007 when justice was used selectively in this country. Even if justice is used selectively in this country now, we will fight. Even if we fail in December, we'll still fight moving forward. We're not going to die and be buried in December. That's not the beginning and the end of life in December. We will continue beyond December. We will fight against any tendencies which they are anti the liberation movement in this country, which they are selective. The issue of corruption, let's just wipe corruptions. But we cannot elevate corruption over and above the main challenges which are faced by our people in this country. The main issue here is unemployment of young and old, ordinary South Africans. The main issue here is South Africans who do not own any assets in this country. If you go next door in Namibia, Namibians, they own everything. You go to Nigeria, in Lagos, every building in Nigeria is owned by the Africans in Nigeria. You come to South Africa, South Africans, they don't even own houses where they live. They don't own cars where they drive. Even those who are part of the middle class in this country, they own nothing. They've got credit cards. They live on credit. We cannot allow that situation in this country.
My parting shot. When would Andile be done with the ANC? What will it take for you to decide, actually, this is no longer for me?
No, you must remember, I never joined the ANC like others. If you go to my mother's home in Nkofimvaba, in a village called Esikobeni, in that village is named after my grandfather, Nombewu, including the schools there. My grandfather was part of the first meeting of the ANC in 1909. Also the second meeting of the ANC in 1912. Even our own friends, they are the Mqoboli families. A person who prayed was Reverend Mqoboli in 1909 and 1912. I'm saying those families which were part, they are still close, because we know our families never joined the ANC because people there have got opportunities of going to government. They took their own calculus in 1909 and 1912 to go and form the ANC. I come from that bloodline of people who founded the ANC, not because I join because I want to be a councillor. I want to be a member of parliament. I join because I want to be a president. I join because I want to be elected as a teacher. No, ours is part of the national struggle which were waged by some of our comrades who are progressive as early as 1909, who were excluded after the South African War. If you come to my family, just if you go outside of Gauteng and Standerton, there's a war memorial grave there. My grandfather is buried there. He fought in the Second World War. I'm saying I come from a home of warriors. To me, ANC is not about membership. It is about a program of action where it must change the lives of ordinary South Africans. That's why I'm saying I really...
You'll never leave the ANC.
No.
Ultimately, that's what you're saying. Do you still live on Umpaqo?
Umphokoqo, Namas.
Yeah, I was close. I used to living on Umphokoqo, Namas.
I'm inviting you in December. You must visit my family.
It's for Umphokoqo and Namasi. Sure.
You will see there's a 10-liter at home. I milk the cows every morning when I'm there. I eat milk, I eat amas, I eat umphokoqo every day. My father at 7 o'clock is the one who makes umphokoqo. Eats every day. All members of the family at home. People, they think it's a joke.
I think people thought it was a joke.
It's not a joke. It's what
I'm gonna
we
visit.
You must
I'll visit. Thank you so much. That's Andile Lungisa, also up for the position of Treasurer General, born into the ANC, as he says. So that's that on that. But ultimately, I think the message from this conversation is young people in the ANC are recognizing that they must rise and take over the movement and shape the way forward, not for the ANC's sake, but for the country's. Thank you, Andile.
Thank you very much. It's
Thank you. So that's it from us this week. But seeing as the ANC conference is just weeks away, we are continuing with the podcast for a little while longer. We will be bringing you more voices about what this moment means for the ANC, but most importantly, for us as a country, as we explore the ANC story towards its 55th National Conference. This podcast was produced by Duduzile Masuku and Amu Ramela. For Eyewitness News, my name is Tshidi Madia.